Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, we're ready to back to old business and further discussion of the comprehensive plan update. And Lisa, you're going to walk us through your plan for the evening?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process for the comprehensive plan update, and I know I've maybe talked to some of you individually, but I don't think I've really laid it out there formally as to what I'm thinking in terms of public process for the zoning ordinance update. And we can take a range of different tactics in terms of how do we want to gather public participation for the comprehensive plan update. Last time we did our community survey, and then we held public hearings on each element. I think we combined elements, and we had, I think, a total of 4 public hearings. We advertised those. They were kind of warmly attended, not very well attended. I think what I would like to do this time is still have the same comprehensive plan survey that we're working on, but then form subcommittees. We have 7 elements of the comprehensive plan, which we talked about when we were doing the survey, and assign 1 planning commissioner to each subcommittee, and then advertise in the newspaper. And I'd like to kind of form subcommittees of 3 to 4 people that have an interest in either economic development, environmental and natural resources, historical and cultural resources. Take all the elements of the comprehensive plan and have subcommittees to kind of deal with that. Now, I made copies for you, and what I'm giving you is there's guidance from the state as to how to update the comprehensive plan. They're working on changing that, and so this was just, and you'll see that it's all underlined. It's really new terminology. It hasn't been approved by the state. It's not that much different than what they look at right now. They really kind of reworded the elements. All the elements are technically the same. So you have, and I numbered them, you've got the 7 elements that we have today. They are adding one called natural hazards. We have currently drafted a hazard mitigation plan. I would assume the state said you could certainly incorporate that by reference. Ours has not been approved by the state yet. So, what towns are generally doing is just incorporating that hazard mitigation plan by reference. So, we may need to look at it in order to incorporate it, but I'm not sure it needs a subcommittee. And then we have number 11, underneath number 8, you have land use, which is kind of an element in itself that kind of incorporates all of the elements and talks about land use. I think that the whole planning commission should be involved in that discussion. And what I've also made a copy of for you, even though our last comprehensive plan was a complete rewrite, the state has these checklists that and I just gave you the services and facilities element just to kind of let you see what they require, and it just kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for when you update each element. What they're looking for is what has changed in that element since the last comprehensive plan. So this just kind of gives you an idea of the information that they're looking for. And for the state, if you filled out 7 of these sheets thoroughly, the state would consider that an update to the comprehensive plan. That's really the only thing that's required. So, it can be that simple. Is ours going to be that simple? I'm sure it's not going to be that simple. But at least this kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for. They want to see changes, and each one has different wording, but they're looking for, what are the significant changes. And these are the ones that were, as you can just looking at this now, our last water treatment plant was 1991, the school was constructed in 91. As you know, we're going to have a whole laundry list of changes in terms of public facilities and services over the last decade. So, that's really what we're going to be looking at. So I think what I would like from you tonight is to just think about the subcommittee concept and talk about it and either endorse it or change it or decide how you really want to handle that in terms of public participation. I would anticipate the subcommittees would meet separately, whatever time it is 3 or 4 people decide on, and kind of make a list of, these are the changes, these are the things, our current plan in economic development talks about this. Here's the changes since the last one, and kind of make a laundry list. We'll kind of come up with some guidelines as to what each subcommittee is going to look at and how they kind of categorize and make a list of what has changed. And then when we all get back together and all the subcommittees kind of meet, we'll all kind of exchange information. But that will kind of translate into new text for the comprehensive plan. I don't expect these subcommittees to write the text.
And when you say subcommittee, you mean people from outside the planning commission
People
being
from outside
on
the
this?
planning commission. What I'd
So
like is
one
to have-
commissioner's
One
head of
commission.
each one, but then bringing other people from the community, and how would we select these other
I
people?
would say that we should, personally go out and find people as well as put an ad in the paper. I mean, certainly we know who the local experts are on cultural resources and historical resources. And I would certainly think that we would kind of put some feelers out there to some of those people, as well as just put an ad in the paper and say we're looking for interested individuals.
Yeah, I guess you always get interested individuals. That the downside of that is that you sometimes get a preponderance of people that are concerned about just one aspect of that, and therefore anything that gets done is slanted to the views of that group. Conservation, you get a bunch of conservationists interested in those people who would like to have a more neutral tone towards that, might not get hurt that way. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about that we don't just get one flavor on these subcommittees, that it's a broad range of people on them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about how we're going to select these people. I think it would be helpful to have maybe another subcommittee of the planning commission look at all the applications and say, because if we're lucky, we're going to get a lot of applicants.
Would those subcommittee meetings be governed by the open meeting?
I would say, I'm not sure. I would say yes, they should all be posted meetings.
And that would be in some sort of town facility.
Yes.
Would 3 or 4 people, it's probably easier to work with 3 or 4 people, but I share Barry's concern, of course, maybe in the other direction, that then you would have, but the same idea, that you could have a very loud voice or 2 in a certain direction. Is it unworkable to have more people, or is it really dependent on how many people apply?
I think we're just going to have to wait and see who applies. I personally think that smaller groups are going to be easier to work with than larger groups.
They're open meetings.
They're
So
open
even
meetings.
people who
Right.
maybe didn't make the cut and were not
Right.
on the committee themselves can attend the meeting and provide input.
Right. That very thing happens on the WIN committee too. We have members of, Nancy's
Yeah.
one of them, that attend every meeting and provide input. So,
So-
that can certainly be the case. I mean, if we're
So how
wildly
many-
successful and we get 7 applicants for a committee, then we can certainly talk about whether to have a committee 7 members.
And the way John runs that is maybe a model for how that could be run, these subcommittees, so that input is solicited from all the interested parties, especially if they keep showing up. But
I
the
think it also-
vote comes down to whoever's been appointed to be on the committee.
Right, I mean, these committees are going to be providing information. They're not going to be authority, decision-making bodies. What they will do is provide input to you as the planning commission, and you will look at everything that they provide to you. And I would anticipate that I would put it all together.
So tell me how that works. They providing information in what sense? I mean, for instance.
They're going to give you a list of, okay, here's our public facilities that have changed since 1991.
Or in economic development, how would that
Or
work?
2001 too. Economic development, if you look at the comprehensive plan, we have a listing, a comprehensive listing, these are all the businesses in Jamestown. We have a listing of, so many acres are taken up by commercial, so many acres are taken up by, yada, yada, and so many lots are used by this, so all that information is just data that needs to be updated.
So the purpose of the committees are to gather data from,
Update data. Yeah.
and not to form policy or to look at how the voting on the comprehensive plan survey came out. That would be our job as a group. Is that-
No, I think they certainly should look at that